Thank you so much, everyone. I am really happy to be here this afternoon with you. And so I'm Margaret Heller. I'm head of digital services at DePaul University, and I'll be talking about Vincentian heritage materials. And I just wanted to start out by saying I'm new to DePaul relatively. I've been there about a year and a half, but I'm not new to digital commons, nor am I new to collaborative collections at Catholic universities. So I'll be talking specifically about this project and some of these projects that are happening at DePaul, but I'll bring in some other experiences from other institutions that I've worked with in the past. To get started, I just want to make it really clear, I did very little, if any of this work, by myself, or even myself. So really there's a team of people who do all this work, and particularly for these projects, Kelly, Nathan, and Miranda are really the ones who made this happen. Kelly would be here. She's in Italy right now rather than here, so she's not at this conference, but Kelly really helped a lot with this, and I'll mention her work throughout. So she's a scholarly communications librarian at DePaul, and then Nathan and Miranda are from the Vincentian Studies Institute. So I'll be referencing their work throughout this presentation. Okay, so let's talk about what is this Vincentian heritage we're talking about. And I'm going to note this is illustrated throughout with digitized materials from our various Vincentian heritage collections, some of which are in digital commons, some of which are in other platforms, but they represent a lot of, they represent different aspects of the collection, a lot of historical materials. So this here is a historical map of the region of France, which St. Vincent was from. All right, so let's talk about what is all this. Okay, so it refers to St. Vincent de Paul. He was a French priest who founded the Congregation of the Mission in France in 1625. And then he worked really closely with Louise de Marillac, St. Louise now. They co-founded the Daughters of Charity in France in 1633. So these are, going back not as old as some of the Catholic orders, but going back, to the 17th century. Another important person we're going to be talking about in the Vincentian tradition is St. Elizabeth Seton, who died in 1821. She founded the Community of the Sisters of Charity, and really kind of kicked off a lot of Catholic life in the United States. There are currently 3 Vincentian universities. This was a kind of trivia question at new faculty and staff orientation. It's like, where are the different Vincentian universities? I had no idea myself, but the answer is DePaul here in Chicago, and then Niagara University and St. John's University, which are both in New York. So there are not as many. I was at a Jesuit university before this, and there's a lot more Jesuit universities. Not so many Vincentian universities, but some interesting things going on with Vincentian heritage. So we'll talk a little more about what that is. So in digital commons specifically, we'll talk about some of those things. Again, this is another historical map of France from the time. Okay, so the repository, which, by the way, is now called Digital Commons at DePaul, if you want to Google that and look at some of this stuff, has been in existence since about 2014, long before I was at DePaul. But this is our usage since 2014, so I looked up the map for that entire time. So you can see we've got, not unexpectedly, a lot of usage in the US and Europe. But I want to point out, I think this is something that probably a lot of us, who work with these type of materials might be used to seeing, but just in case you hadn't noticed it, you'll notice there's actually quite a lot of usage in South America and Africa and in Southeast Asia. So these are areas with larger Catholic populations, and a lot of these materials are really, useful and interesting to people in those regions. And again, as we know, when we digitize materials, we make it available to people worldwide that might be of interest to them. So I just want to highlight, we can see there is a lot of usage in those regions, what we'd expect to see, maybe a larger Catholic population. And then they're not going to be able to travel to France or to the US to see some of the originals of these. So it's a good service we do in digitizing these kinds of things. And you can see, like, in that 11 years, a lot of usage of these materials. So the types of collections that we have in digital commons include digitized images, digitized serials. This is one example. This is a the Journal of the Congregation of the Mission from 1834. And we have historical maps you've been seeing. And then we also have what we'll talk a little bit in a moment, current journals and the journal archives of some of those more current journals. So these are still active areas of research, active areas of publications. It's not just digitized historical materials. Let's talk about one of those examples of a specifically of a journal. So this is a Vincentian Heritage Journal. It has been published since 1980. It's now, as of 2024, on volume 38. So you can see an example here. And this is something that the Vincentian Studies Institute publishes. And so Miranda and Nathan, who I mentioned earlier, do a lot of the hands-on work with this. A couple interesting things about this journal. One is that we had, I think, we'll talk about this more in a moment, but I think like a lot of libraries had some staffing challenges in recent years. And there was really nobody for kind of a while from the library actively supporting this journal. But because of kind of our great support from our Digital Commons support person, Miranda was able to get all her questions answered in that time. And this journal and some of our other journals kind of went plugging along with no problems, even when the library wasn't actively able to support them. So that was really good news. I found when I came to see that these journals were still active. They didn't fall off the map. So Vincentian Heritage, by the way, in the last 90 days, this journal has had about 16,000 downloads. So we can see this is still a really active area. This is really important that this material is still out there. Okay, I want to talk about another interesting project from Vincentian Heritage, and this is, again, Vincentian Studies Institute doing this work, the St. Elizabeth Ann Bailey Seton Family Papers. So I mentioned Elizabeth Seton, which was actually the first United States born canonized saint. And she had a very interesting life. She was born in 1774. She lived in New York. She had kind of a dramatic childhood and converted to Catholicism in 1805 when that was really brand new, like it was actually kind of illegal to be Catholic before that. So she really did a lot of interesting work on that to bring Catholicism to the United States and Catholic parochial education to the United States. And so she founded the Daughters of Charity in Emmitsburg, Maryland, near Baltimore. And their archives are being digitized, and we are holding those archives. So this is a really interesting, exciting, and there's a lot of stuff that will eventually be digitized. Right now, we've put in Miranda has put in about 100 papers. There's more than that, but there was 100 put on in March, and this has had about, even since in the last 90 days, about 2,000 downloads of this material, and it's very, like very big names from early, in the early 1800s in Catholic history. So a lot of really interesting archival materials. So here we have St. Vincent here working with the Daughters of Charity. So I want to talk about how this all works. How did we get these collections? How are we doing this work? And how can we be successful in these kinds of projects? So one of the fun things about St. Vincent, he has a lot of aphorisms, and we learn a lot of these when we get onboarded at DePaul, all the different things that St. Vincent would say. So a lot of Vincentian thought is around what are the problems that we have to solve and what's the best way we have to solve them. And I liked this one, the good works are often spoiled by moving too quickly. That if you have a good idea of how to solve a problem and you just dive right into it, you don't really work with everyone, it's not going to be successfthe. So I think that's something it's fun working in a place where there's sort of like some, the original founder of the ideology, like the ideologies of it are like kind of founded in like practicality and how do we make stuff happen. So we can use those ideas in our day-to-day work. It's really good. So here's some connections that have to exist to make this happen. So we have the Division of Mission and Ministry at DePaul, and they have the Vincentian Studies Institute there. That was moved to DePaul in 1995, so it's kind of a long time that has been at DePaul. And then there's a close connection between that Division of Mission and Ministry and the library. So 3 departments in particular: Special Collections and Archives, which holds a lot of the material, Reference Instruction and Academic Engagement, where Kelly is in that department and does a lot of outreach and training. And then Digital Services that I'm head of, we do a lot of that systems work to make all this happen. Then on the other side, we have the American Western Province of the Congregation of the Mission, so that's sort of like, Vincentian materials. Their archives were transferred to DePaul in 2001, so those archives are held by Special Collections. And then the Archives of the Daughters of Charity Province of St. Louis, that is that original place that Elizabeth Seton founded all those years ago. They're working on digitizing all of those materials right now. They're doing it there, and they're shipping the files to Vincentian Studies Institute, which is processing them and then moving them to Digital Commons. So there's a lot of connections between these external and internal partners that make this all happen. So, and not surprisingly, like I said, we had some staffing issues over the last couple of years at DePaul. And I just want to mention, too, I think a lot of times that this is the thing I've seen over and over again, that someone has a great idea, a collaboration happens, that person leaves, one person leaves on one side, the collaboration goes away, and it takes years sometimes to rebuild that. So I want to talk about how that's happened with some of these projects specifically, but I think we could all think of examples of similar things, and I could share other examples as well. So as of July 2023, there was only one part-time digital services staff member. Everyone else had retirements, there was hiring freezes, people left, all kinds of things. So there was some interim staff, but there wasn't really a full department. And that person who was that one part-time person did work a little bit on Digital Commons, still works a little bit on Digital Commons, but just as helping with processing things, not really, not building those collaborations or anything like that. So not a lot of continuity of information there. And then, so January 2024, I started and Kelly started at the same time. Now, I want to point out one important thing there is Kelly and I had worked together at a previous institution, so we already knew each other. So coming into DePaul, it was a lot easier to get some of those collaborations kicked off because we already had the rapport, we already worked together, we already had some trust built. So when you're building collaboration, if you don't have those relationships already, you have to allow time for those to build. Those don't happen overnight. So I would say a lot of that success is just Kelly and I already knew each other. We felt comfortable jumping into these projects together. So over the summer, we got onboarded, we figured stuff out. Our head of special collections said, I really have to introduce you to the Vincentian Studies Institute staff because they've got Digital Commons projects. And we said, oh yeah, we'd love to. We don't know anything about these projects. We really had no idea these were even there. So we met with them in September 2024, had a really great conversation, was really excited to hear what they were doing. They were really excited to hear what we were doing. We'll talk more about what some of that is coming up soon. And then because we made that connection when this project to do the Bailey Seton Family Papers project that Miranda was working on, we were able to work with them and try to figure out what's the best structure for this, make some decisions at the beginning that we felt really comfortable with. Again, they'd already been working with the platform. They have a journal in there. They had all these things. They were very comfortable with, probably more comfortable with it than a lot of library staff at the Institute. But they really were interested in finding out what the library's goals were and working with us. And like I said, that project started and is already getting a lot of downloads, a lot of notice. So I wanted to, this map here, I kind of chose this deliberately for a few different reasons. There's a lot of reckoning in Catholic history about the legacy of Catholic missionaries and Catholic missions coming to the United States, both in terms of kind of converting Native Americans, legacy of slaveholding in the Catholic orders. And these are a lot of things that, we're looking at our archival collections and we're really reckoning with that history. But they also, there's a lot of, because of the need to have these maps of where people are going, there's some really kind of interesting historical maps that you see in here for reasons like that. And you can see sort of trade routes and rivers and things are very highly marked out on here because those were important things to know about. So I chose this for a couple reasons, that when you're coming up with an idea of what your next frontier is, you want to be really mindful of who is already there, what their needs are, and what the, kind of what's the best ethical, sustainable path forward. So that's kind of where we are right now with the repository. It's like we have to reckon with where we want to go, and make sure that we're telling the right stories in our digital collections. So one exciting thing, we have a new committee, so there's a peer and institutional repository committee. We also have peer for EGS. So I think it's PERC is a fun acronym for this, and the chair of this committee is sitting right there, John. But he can speak more to some of these things. But I think this is what's really exciting about this is that we are trying to integrate the work of the repository across the library. We don't want it to be where one department or one individual owns the repository. And I think I've certainly worked in jobs like that before. I'm sure a lot of us have worked in situations where you are the repository person and you do it all. And the problem with that is that when it's not fully integrated, it never becomes a really vital part of the library. So just as the books you buy are integrated across the library, other types of collections are integrated across the library. The institutional repository and faculty profiles and all that kind of stuff should be integrated across the library. So we have 3 groups that make this happen. We have the scholarly communications group, which is mostly public services staff. We have the workflows group, which is mostly cataloging staff. And we have the systems group, which is mostly digital services staff, I certainly float between all these. I have experience in all these areas. But this is been a really positive way to look at this holistically and trying to think about what do we want to happen with the repository, looking at some of these really successful collaborative collections and what are areas that we need to grow in. So a couple of those things I wanted to highlight here from the future things for our repository that uses this collaborative model. So we want to have that balance between those distributed collections and decentralized administration with a central cohesion of vision. So it's really wonderful that we have all these partners that put journals and put the exhibits and put all this cool stuff in there. We want to make sure we know what are they doing, what are their needs, and that we want to also look for areas of growth there. We plan to, we'll see, move the Vincentian Heritage Journal to the new journal experience. So we'll be working with Miranda and Nathan to make that happen, hopefully in the coming months. We're looking at maybe a new name for the repository. We already changed the name once in 2022. It used to be called Via Sapienti, which is a fun name, but I guess no one could spell it. Now it's called Digital Commons at DePaul. Less fun, but we might come up with something new, but I'm sure everyone can imagine it's a big project to do that. And then again, trying to work on that digital strategy for what our partnership collections are. How do we highlight those? What are the best places to put them?